Hello everyone. Wishing you all good health, peace, and the courage to follow your heart, even when the path is uncertain. Life often brings us to crossroads moments when the past calls us back, yet the future whispers of something new. For Tieu Ca, that moment had arrived. Would she return to the life she once knew, with all its familiar comforts and unhealed scars? Or would she dare to step forward into an unknown future, one where freedom and healing awaited? And then there was Hung, the man who had stood quietly beside her, weathering storms and sharing her burdens. But could he truly stay by her side, no matter which path she chose? The answers lay not in fate, but in the choices of their hearts. The wind carried the scent of rain that evening, curling through the open window and stirring the curtains like ghostly hands. Tieu stood by the crib, watching Min An sleep, the gentle rise and fall of his chest steady and calm. Yet inside her, nothing was calm. For weeks, she had felt it, the pull of her old life, the one she had walked away from. There were people waiting for her in the city, promises half kept, a career she had barely begun. 18 years old, with 2 children in her arms, she wondered if she could still reclaim the path she had once dreamed of. Across the room, Hung watched her in silence. He could read the thoughts behind her faraway gaze. He had seen it before, in the way she lingered by the window at night, or paused too long when holding a pen in her hand. Hung knew that Tieu Ca's heart was divided between the life she had now and the one she feared she might regret leaving behind. Tieu Ca, his voice broke the stillness, deep and steady. You don't have to choose tonight, but whatever you choose, I want to be where you are. She turned to face him. The lamplight caught the worry in his eyes, not fear of losing her love, but fear of her losing herself. Hung had been her anchor through the storms, yet he had never tried to cage her. That freedom, she realized, was both a gift and a temptation. The next morning, they walked along the river with Han skipping ahead and Min An tucked safely in Hung's arms. The water shimmered under the sunlight, endless and open, like the life Tieu could still claim. But when Han laughed, that pure, ringing sound, and Hung's eyes met hers over the baby's head, she felt something shift. Her dreams still called to her, yes. But maybe, she thought, dreams could be rewritten. Maybe the life she wanted wasn't somewhere far away in the city. Maybe it was here. In the quiet weight of her son against her shoulder, in the warmth of a man who had never let go. That night, as the rain returned, Tieu Ca whispered into the dark, "I'm not going anywhere." Hung's hand found hers, warm and certain. In that moment, she knew her new life had already begun, and he was part of it. The rain fell softly through the night, tapping against the roof like a quiet lullaby. Tieu Ca lay awake for a while, listening to the gentle rhythm. Beside her, Hung was already asleep, one arm draped protectively over her waist, as if even in dreams he was afraid to let go. In the crib nearby, Min An made a small sigh in his sleep. Tieu Ca rose, wrapped herself in a thin blanket, and lifted her son into her arms. His warmth seeped into her, and she pressed a kiss to his tiny forehead. In that moment, she realized something. The future didn't have to be a choice between her and them. It could be all of them together. The following day brought a rare break in the rain. Sunlight poured across the garden, catching on the wet leaves until they glistened like jewels. Hung busied himself hanging laundry, while Han chased a ball across the grass, her laughter tumbling through the air. Tieu Ca stood at the doorway, holding Min An, her heart swelling with a quiet certainty she hadn't felt in months. After lunch, Hung sat with her at the small wooden table. He leaned back in his chair, watching her in that patient way of his. "You've decided," he said, not as a question, but as if he could already see the answer in her face. She met his gaze. "I'm staying. But I don't want to give up on my dreams, Hung. I still want to study, to work, to be more than just surviving." A slow smile spread across his face. "Then, we'll find a way. You don't have to choose between your dreams and your family. We'll make them grow together." The words sank deep into her, not just as comfort, but as a promise. Weeks passed, and life settled into a gentle rhythm. Hung took over the shop in town, giving Tieu Ca a few hours each day to take online classes. Han learned to read to her baby brother, while Min An grew stronger with each passing day. One evening, as they all sat together on the porch watching the sky turn gold and violet, Tieu Ca felt an unfamiliar sensation: peace. Not the fleeting peace that comes between storms, but the lasting kind that comes from knowing you are exactly where you are meant to be. Hung reached for her hand, their fingers intertwining. She leaned into him, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for staying by my side." Months slipped by, like pages turning in a well-worn book. Tieu Ca's days became a blend of early morning feedings, online lectures, and moments of laughter that spilled through the small house like sunlight. Hung kept his promise. Every decision, every plan, was made with her beside him. As if the two of them were building a bridge to a shared future, one plank at a time. By spring, the garden outside their home had begun to bloom. Tieu Ca often studied at a small table under the peach tree, Min An napping in a wicker bassinet beside her. Sometimes Han would run from the house, clutching her schoolwork, eager to show her mother a gold star from her teacher. These were the little victories that stitched themselves into Tieu Ca's heart. One afternoon, Hung returned from town carrying a stack of envelopes. He handed one to her, the seal of a university printed neatly on the front. Her hands trembled as she tore it open. "Congratulations," Hung read over her shoulder, his voice warm with pride. "You've been accepted." Her eyes filled with tears. This was more than just an acceptance letter. It was proof that she could still chase her dreams without leaving behind the life they had built. That night, after the children were asleep, they sat together on the porch. The air was cool, carrying the scent of blooming jasmine. "Hung," she said softly, "I don't think I would have had the courage to try without you." He shook his head. "You've always had the courage, Tieu Ca. You just needed someone to remind you of it." The following months brought new challenges. Balancing school, work, and 2 children wasn't easy. There were nights when exhaustion pulled at her bones, mornings when she doubted if she could keep going. But every time she faltered, Hung was there with a cup of tea, with a word of encouragement, with the quiet strength that never asked for recognition. One evening, as the sun sank behind the hills, Tieu Ca watched her children playing in the garden while Hung fixed the old wooden fence. She realized that her life had become exactly what she once thought she couldn't have: a blend of love, ambition, and a safe place to return to. She walked toward Hung, slipping her arms around him from behind. "No matter where my dreams take me," she whispered, "I want you and the kids there with me." Some journeys in life are not about choosing one path over another, but about learning to carry both with you. Tieu Ca's story teaches us that love and dreams do not have to live on opposite sides of a decision. At 18, with 2 children in her arms, she stood at a crossroads most people never face so young: the call of her ambitions on one side, and the quiet, steady warmth of family on the other. Her choice to stay was not a surrender. It was a decision to weave her dreams into the life she had, rather than abandon one for the other. And that is the heart of her lesson to us. True strength lies in building, not in escaping. We often think we must chase our goals alone, that success is measured in solitary victories. But Tieu Ca's journey shows another truth, that when we allow others to walk beside us, to lift us when we falter, our dreams become lighter to carry. Hung's steady presence was not the reason she succeeded, but it was the reason she never gave up. This story is also a reminder that happiness is not found only in milestones, diplomas, promotions, applause, but in the quiet moments in between. A child's laughter, a warm cup of tea, the safety of a hand held in the dark. In the end, Tieu Ca's life tells us that the greatest victories are not in reaching the finish line first, but in creating a journey worth walking, with people worth walking it with. Dreams, after all, mean little if we arrive at them alone. And perhaps the most precious truth in Tieu Ca's story is this: life will rarely give us the perfect timing we hope for. The world will not pause so we can prepare ourselves. Sometimes, the blessings that shape us arrive in the middle of chaos, when we feel least ready to receive them. Min An's birth, Han's innocent questions, Hung's quiet devotion, none of these came with warning. Yet they became the very reasons Tieu Ca found the courage to grow. Her path reminds us that resilience is not about enduring the storm until it passes, but about learning to plant flowers in the rain. She did not wait for ideal conditions. She built her life in the here and now, turning small, daily choices into a foundation strong enough to hold her dreams. For anyone standing at a similar crossroads, her story offers comfort and challenge at the same time. You do not have to give up one part of yourself to honor another. You can be both a dreamer and a caretaker, both ambitious and deeply rooted in love. In the end, the measure of a life is not whether we followed the plan we first imagined, but whether we found a way to live fully in the plan life gave us. Tieu Ca's choice was not about staying or leaving. It was about redefining what it meant to have it all. And through her courage, she proved that all doesn't mean everything. It means the right things: love, purpose, and a future she could walk toward with the people she loved most.